it has gone 2 o'clock. I would like us to start with our meeting of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament for purposes of looking into the annual report of the Department of the Treasury and its agency or entity, which is the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. We're going to do the meeting in 3 parts. The first part is going to be the committee and the Auditor General as well as the Audit Committee for purposes of being briefed by the Auditor General and the Audit Committee about the audit outcomes of the department as well as its agency. It's a in-committee meeting, that is a closed meeting that is not open to the public. And the second part is going to be the meeting with it. We are going to be joined by the department, the Treasury and its agency, and it's going to be an open meeting. And the third part of the meeting will give to members of the public who are in the meeting, who would like to ask questions and comments. Before we may start, can I request the honorable members that are present for record purposes?
Afternoon, Chair. Kayla Murray. I'm standing in on behalf of Member Matlodi Maseko.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. My name is Derek America. I'm a permanent member of the committee.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Chair. Afternoon to the AG and everyone present. Bulelo Isaac Sileko, member of the committee.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I'm now going to hand over to the AG and the audit committee, and then I will first start with the AG on both the department's audit outcome as well as the agency, and thereafter we will give to the audit committee. I will request members. Okay. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, let us resume our second part of the meeting of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament for purposes of looking into the annual report of the Department of the Treasury in the province and its agency, the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. We'll be looking at its annual report as well as the Auditor General's report of the department and its agency. Now, this meeting, unlike the previous one we had where it was in committee, it is an open meeting. In other words, it is open to members of the public because it was also advertised as such in all the 3 official languages of the province in various newspapers. So when we finish engaging the department as members, we will allow members of the public who are present, who showed an interest in asking questions or comments or points of clarity on the annual report as well as on the Auditor General's report and the Audit Committee report. Before we may start with the report, I don't know whether are there any introductory remarks, Honorable Minister, you'd like to make, as well as the HOD.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Greetings to you and members of the Public Accounts Committee. We are here to answer any of your questions relating to the Provincial Treasury or the entity in respect of our audit outcomes and our financial statements. Thank you.
So, you're fine. Okay. You've been well represented by the minister. Okay. Now, when we are going to look at the report, the annual report of both the department as well as the agency, we are looking at section C, section E, as well as section F. We are going to deal with the reports simultaneously. In other words, when I ask members to ask questions, they will ask questions in both the department's report, C, E, and F, as well as that of the agency. But for purposes of this meeting, I will request members, if we may start, if you've got question on the Gambling and Racing Board first, because I think we must actually, after when we finish with them, we can release them, and then we can continue with the department. There's been a request that we can start with the agency first. If we can deal with the section C, E, and F on the agency, as well as the Auditor General's report. Any indications of questions? If I may start, it is something unusual I don't normally do while members are still finding their questions. Let me maybe start the way. I think one of the issues that, based on the Auditor General's report we have received, part of the underspending was in relation of the filling of positions. I think it's in the agency. If we can get an indication as to what those positions are and why they have not been filled. Were there any particular reasons maybe that those positions have not been filled? That can be, as a start, one question from my side. Are there any questions, honorable members? Honorable Murray?
Okay, just out of curiosity, so page 47, part C deals with risk management. But I'm just curious as well, it talks a lot about its enterprise risk management, and that it's used to grow the success of the board, but it's put under risk management, and I'm just curious to get a more detailed understanding of how does their ERM assist with risk management? What ERM do they currently use? And how, or what are the needs to improve on or expand the functionality of the ERM so that it can better manage risks? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Ngondlo, Honorable Sileko,
Nature's, this one is a very sweet one. On page 49, I see that the board says the internal control unit, they don't have an internal control unit. Is that the norm? Just need to understand in terms of this how they operate gambling racing boards, that they don't have internal audit units. So just for interest sake, thank you.
another one from my side, I think it's related to a question that was asked by Honorable America, and I thought maybe we can also ask it to it's in relation to the contingent liability of Grand West of 46 million. Whether is the issue also gonna be one of the matters, is it receiving any attention? Because it was a matter that was asked when we were actually dealing with the Auditor General. If we can give an opportunity to respond, and then if there are, I will allow another round from members if there's any question that are arising. I think what we'll do now is normally when the delegation is too big, we don't allow the delegation to introduce themselves. As and when a person speaks, please introduce yourself as well as your position as well.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. My name is Claude Vassiday. I'm the Chairperson of the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. All members of the board, except one, are present, who's tendered an apology because of illness. Also, the members of the senior executive management of the board are present today.
Can we get responses to the questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, the first question, as I understand it, relates to the filling of positions. We have done a study of the staffing establishment. We've procured a service provider to provide us with an optimum structure, which is served before the board. The board has implemented the recommendations. We have identified or prioritized those positions that need to be filled. We will be developing a plan in a phased manner to immediately fill those positions. And thereafter, we will be making representations to the minister about the filling of further positions, because what is envisaged is that the staffing establishment is going to be increased to give effect to the changes in the operations of the board. If I may ask the CEO if he wishes to add anything further on the staffing, filling of positions.
Thank you, sir. My name is Primo Abrams, CEO, Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. So what had happened is that we, as the chair said, we engaged on an audit exercise to determine what staffing needs we have for our future. And so we suspended the appointment of any staff. So there's a couple of vacancies, and so we're going to use those vacancies to fill the more urgent ones that need to be filled right now, and then we'll go to the minister for approval for filling any further vacancies. So it was a strategy that we used just to make sure that we have a staffing function to go forward for the next couple of years, especially since we are doing changes at the board, and that's why those vacancies were not filled right at the time. Thank you, sir.
A question that we asked regarding risk management as well as the lack of internal control.
Thank you, Chair. On that question, I'll defer to the CFO to in the process of risk management, please.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Zoe Siva. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the board. A member, to your question in terms of the enterprise risk management, we do not have an automated system. It's still a manual system. We did recently go through a risk review process, and actually one of the resolutions of the audit committee is that the board considers procuring a software risk, but we're not there yet. So we're still considering it, but not there. In terms of the member's question in respect of the internal audit internally, the board is a very small entity. I don't think it is a norm. So we do outsource our internal audit to an external party. We are considering, as part of the organizational structure review, to appoint a internal auditor in-house. Do you understand? But currently, that is not as part of the board's. Yeah, no, that's fine. So, and then also in terms of the internal control unit, the bigger departments have an internal control unit, but we don't have because the establishment is so small. So the internal audit then assists the board in terms of that. Member, can I also ask respond to the contingent liability? Is that fine?
Yes, yes, yes.
So I think the question was, and I will also ask I think the question was as to why there's no, is that the question, that no amount disclosing the financial statements in terms of that? Members, I think when these papers were served, there was an understanding and an agreement that each party will pay their own legal fees. So it's only when we oppose a legal matter and we are then responsible for the other party's legal fees, we will then indicate that the possible outcome would be 600,000 or 900,000. But in this case, there was an agreement that each party will pay their own legal costs, and as such, there's no amount indicated for that contingent liability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions to the agency? I think then if there is none, I think is Honorable Ngondo.
Chair, can I just get clarity on page 99 on the annual license fees on the receivables? If you can just explain to me between 2022 and 2023, does this mean that because I see the figure has actually gone down, does it mean there were less people paying license fees, or it's me missing it? If you can just explain that for me. I think that's the one question, just a clarity, Chair.
Thank you, Member. So the decrease just means that we settled some of more of the accounts prior to year end. So it's not to say that there were less applications. It is just that when we settle these amounts from the trust accounts, we just, for example, let's say we were able. So how it works is if a member has, if a license holder has monies in his trust account, we are able to settle from the trust account. So there's not really a trend year on year, so that you can compare it. It is just what was available for the board to settle from the trust account, Member.
If, Honorable Mare.
Chair, Chair, sorry, I'm a bit more confused. If you could please just advise me on the receivables, what are the terms usually for the receivables? I think my colleague asked about whether this came from revenue from licensing. You mentioned that it came from trusts. What did you mean by that exactly? Who are those people that were receiving the funds from? Thank you.
So Member, if I may, we don't actually have term, like usually they have to. Okay, let me explain it to this. In terms of the section 32 and 34 of the Act of the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Act, before we can conduct business or a license holder, you need to have money in trust. So when we start, it's basically the same as a lawyer's trust account. So the money needs to be available. And when we do work, then we basically recover money from the trust account. So there's not really, obviously 30 days is the norm. But we don't really work in terms of 30 days. It is just that if a license holder does not have sufficient monies in trust, we then inform them, the license holder, to say, listen, you need to top up your trust account. They will do so. And we never had issues where we had to wait extended periods of time for license holders to top up their trust accounts. And that is how we then recover the monies. This annual license fee, so when a gambling license is approved, they need to pay an annual license fee and an annual investigation fee. And that money, the annual license fee, is actually payable to the provincial fiscus. And so this is not in terms of application, it is when the license has been approved.
No, thanks, Chair. I'm sure at a certain point we will need a crash course, CFO, so that we better understand the fee structure and how it works. It helps us to have that understanding at the back of our minds, especially when we read what is in your financials. On page 112, on the general expenses, if I can just understand, I see that from your printing, the responsible gambling awareness, including staff welfare, you would have had a serious increase of spending. If you can just explain why this, what were these activities around responsible gambling, and what staff welfare did you have to take up if one looks at the money that was spent between the previous year and the reporting one that we're dealing with? So if you can just enlighten us on that one.
Thank you, member. I just want to confirm, is the other one printing and stationery, member? Oh, noted. So member, in terms of the responsible gambling awareness, what we did for the year under review was to appoint a service provider that can help the board with content, with media advertising. So included in that amount of 894 is, for example, a media campaign that we did in December 2022. That was a radio campaign, which obviously, so that costing is based what we paid the service provider for social media campaigns, the radio campaign, for example. And so the prior year, so that is why there's such a big increase from last year, because I think in the prior year, what we did for the 206 was only advertising in newspapers. So media, a radio campaign is much more expensive if you compare that to the cost of newspapers. That is also included in the social media campaigns, for example, where we advertise responsible gambling via Facebook, etc. In terms of the staff welfare, so included in that amount, we pay a monthly amount to iCares for staff welfare, where the staff has access to whatever they would need in terms of staff welfare. And then for the year under review, we also had a staff breakaway function, which we could not do the prior year due to COVID-19 pandemic. So I think a portion of that amount is in terms of the staff breakaway, which was for a period of 2 days, 1.5 days, and iCares and publications. Member Nkondlo, I just have to look into that 1617 in terms of the increase, and I will provide that response to you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I was just curious, on expenditure page 76 on depreciation of PPE, I just wanted to know what is the PPE that is being depreciated? And then in terms of your average useful life, I see, for example, with computers, you have an average useful life between 3 and 25 years. I understand government does like to bleed assets, but I'm not clear on what the exact useful life is. And I'm concerned because we've seen with other entities before how the failure to declare what that useful life was properly resulted in reports from the AG. So if you could just explain that to me a bit. Thank you.
So member, in note 9 of the financial statements, if you look at page 101, we include all the asset categories that we have. For example, we have motor vehicles, we have equipment and furniture, computers, computer accessory, and then you will see under reconciliation of property, the depreciation that was recognized for each of those categories for the year under review. In terms of your question of the average, so what we do disclose in the financial statements is the average useful life. So it may be that a computer we write off over a period of 3 to 4 years, but included in that category is also servers, which have, for example, a longer period like 10 to 15 years. But as you would know, every year we reassess the useful life of our assets, and it may then mean that we need to increase it, because if an asset is still in a workable condition, you can then extend the useful life. And I think over time, the average is then between 2 and 25 years, because we were able to move within that category. So it's not to say that PCs is only, for example, 3 years. Especially after COVID, we tried to extend the useful life of, because we had difficulty importing equipment from overseas, and therefore we had to extend our useful lives.
My last one, Chair, on this one, on page 127, on the irregular expenditure. What happened here? Why was this foreign supplier not confirmed with something as basic as a tax compliance status, which is a requirement, a government requirement? So what happened here, and by when are you concluding this investigation?
Chair, if I may, through you. Member Nkonhla, so this actually happened during the December holidays. So it was basically an isolated event. I think there was just a miscommunication between departments. I can confirm subsequently that so what needs to happen when we go on conferences, they need to complete these bid documents. And the recent one, the supply or the conference people came back and say, listen, this is not a bid, so therefore I cannot complete these documents. We then have written to National Treasury, and National Treasury subsequently came back to say that the attendance of conferences are not actually a procurement matter. We then came back to the Provincial Treasury, and remember currently, I just got the email this morning to say the PT has drafted the response, and they're coming back and they are just waiting for information from National Treasury. So we have started with the investigation, member. The question is whether this amount should actually be irregular expenditure. So until such time we get confirmation from the PT, it may be that the board will going to remove the 58 from irregular expenditure, as it is not really a procurement matter as per the National Treasury. Or if the PT comes back, we will need to come to the Provincial Treasury for condonation of the amount, member.
Sorry, Chair, can I check CFO? Does it preclude what is written here, that the supplier of the services were at the time were not tax compliant, because that's what it says here?
Member, no, it is. I think what we indicated is we did not ask we didn't basically check the tax compliance. So it's not to say that he wasn't tax compliant. The office of the board didn't check for the tax compliance, and I think that was the non-compliance. But as indicated, we are waiting for the guidance from the PT to see as to whether this amount should be irregular expenditure or not.
Honorable Selek.
Yeah, Chair, thank you very much. To the CFO. CFO, one understands that in terms of supply chain, there's a lot of regulations. And I think that's the issue that we've been grappling with, Minister, that some of the mistakes that tend to happen, it's human error, and it tend to happen because you have to comply with a lot of things. And I would just want to ask the CFO, in terms of what you have just said, is it a norm or is it tend to happen? What you just explained, that an official would not consider one of the criteria or might overlook one of the criteria, like an issue of a clearance certificate that is compliant, or is it just out of the ordinary, so that we can be aware? Thank you very much.
Member, thank you. This issue was actually raised by the AGSA a few years ago. And subsequent to that, we have not had any audit findings in that regard. This irregular expenditure was also not flagged by the AGSA. The Office of the Board recognized the irregular expenditure. So as I indicated, this was an isolated event in the sense that it happened during when staff were on leave, do you understand? So it was not in the normal course of business. Obviously, we are looking at strengthening our controls to ensure that it does not happen again, but it can happen due to human error, unfortunately.
Okay. If Honorable put a question to the agency, we can actually then maybe then release can excuse them, and then we can continue then with the department. So
Thank you, Chairperson.
whilst the agency is preparing, can I get an indication of members who would like to ask questions to the department? We as usual, we are dealing with we are dealing with C, E, and F. So any questions? C, E, and F. If Honorable Ngonzo.
Injani. Okay, page 81. I'm hoping I'm in the right section. Check. Page 81 on the key risks. Can I just understand from the department? I see on bullet 2 that they're saying one of the key risks considered was the ability of provincial treasurer to improve conformance by municipalities to laws and regulations in the SAM environment. If they can just share with us, I remember we earlier on in the morning, we did have some conversation about the work that they are doing with the municipalities. But also I would just want to understand, particularly with the departments and entities, because I think what we were just raising about a tax compliance certificate that is not checked, I think we would have seen even in the other departments that the kind of irregular expenditure that you would find with the other departments that we have seen to date is on those small issues, supply chain related issues. And I'm asking in as far as department and entities, how has been your experience as Treasury, and how are you dealing with that control environment with the provincial departments and entities? That's the first one. My second one is on the last paragraph. I think on the emerging risks, on the increased strain on employees' well-being due to high department vacancy rates. I'm sure you would have spoken to this issue earlier on around what are some of the programs that you are dealing with. I'm just wanting to understand on this one, what kind of conversations or even platforms internally in the department do you have with the employees outside of your wellness? Because I understand you did indicate that you've got a wellness where employees, when they are stressed out, I'm sure they could communicate. But what kind of other mechanisms within directorates, between senior managers, just to ensure that this kind of issues are picked up and are followed through, and you create an environment from which employees are able to express themselves? And then my last one on this round, Chair. Okay. Are you taking 3 questions at a time? Oh, okay. Okay, I was on
All-
3 in the last one.
No,
That's
no,
why.
all the question we have now, we just wanted to deal with the agency so that they finish. Now,
Okay.
deal with all your questions.
Page 83, the new case, if you can share with us what the details about it. Is it the same case that you have already closed? Because I see that the year is actually the same 2022, 2023. Is that the case, or this other one is separate? If so, please just provide details about that case. And then I just want to understand, I think on your BBB compliance on page 95, I think on there you say not applicable on developing criteria for entering into partnerships with the private sector. And I think this links to the discussion we had earlier on, that there are PPPs that are in the departments. I think some were even mentioned in the other sections. And whilst you've got a role to oversight them and monitor. So I'm trying to understand, why would you say this developing criteria for entering partnerships with private sector is not applicable? Also considering that you are also engaged in a model that I think was spoken about earlier on, that will consider how you blend financing with other entities outside of the state, be it donor or whatever. So you don't see this applicable in your environment. If you can just educate me on that one. I will pause for now, Chair, so that perhaps my questions can be answered, and then I'll come back in another round. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm on pages 118 and 119, which deal with sick leave over the periods of 1 January 2022 to 31 December 2022. If I look at the highly skilled supervision, total days is 1,457 and estimated cost is 2.7 million. It's quite a lot of money, if I'm reading that correctly. Sorry, are you able to find it? One 118 to 119.
The question is in part D.
Oh, I'm on human resources. Apologies, Chair. Okay, excuse me for now, please, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. This one is going, Minister is good. I'm talking to my colleagues Aziz here. Let's talk about Laingsburg. We spoke about Laingsburg having a problem in terms of MSCOA, in terms of the second generation, or because the system that is used by Mosselburg is actually the system that must be used by Laingsburg, but due to financial constraints, as being the smallest municipality who cannot afford, it impacts on their audit outcomes because they have to do things manually, and that was an outcry there. So, and it's one of the risk that we were dealing with in the previous. So I just wanted to know, how does one assist such municipalities? Because if one does not assist them due to financial constraints, we will always find their audit outcomes not being what we want them to see. Not because they are no control, issue under control or measures in place, but because of the system that they are using, and the system that would actually guarantee better audit outcomes is actually costing them arm and a leg. How does one assist such municipalities like Laingsburg? Because that has been an outcry when I was there as a chairperson of local government. And also in terms of 131, there is one case that was submitted for condonement on the 19th of April 2023. And they say that case still under determination. We are in October now. Can we just get an update pertaining to that? 131. Those are the questions, Chair. Thank you. 131.
Seleku, just a couple of questions from my side. The first one is on page 4. Of course, you don't have the Auditor General's report, but one of the slides of pages, there's a page that deals with funding of the department, and also they are listing the reason for underspending or over collection. And one of the areas that is raised on the, I think, on underspending is relating to the actual cost of support to the Beaufort West municipality for the implementation of a mandatory financial recovery plan that was less than the estimated cost. Now, if I look, I think it's trying to check the page there. I think you've budgeted about 2 million and you ended up using 350 million, 350,000. So I just want to check how is the progress on that, and then is there any improvement in view of the fact that you ended up using less money that you've actually budgeted for? Might assist if you can just take us into confidence on that. The other question, again, relating to the Auditor General's report, HOD and the minister, there were 2 programs that were audited. There's program 2 talks about sustainable resource management. And it says is to ensure the efficient and effective management of provincial and municipal financial resources. Now, it's probably a little bit unrelated to this, but also related so far as sustainable resource management is concerned. We only talk about financial resources. We've met a couple of departments before who deals with not only financial resources, but they deal with natural resources. You know, for sustainable development. And of course, one such department is the department that Department of Environmental Development and of course Cape Nature. And in order for them to advance a sustainable development agenda, they always complain about not having enough money. And we can only raise that. Of course, we can't raise it with them. We must raise it with you as the National Treasury, the people that are responsible for the purse. That department is just one example. I think there were 2 others as well. They said, look, we'd like to do more, but we can't. But maybe specifically for that department of environmental affairs and that deals with sustainable development, are there any plans of actually increasing the allocation? I see the minister is already not, because otherwise, because we're battling here the fact that they put up a very compelling and a convincing argument for them to advance sustainable development, you know, but they can't advance that agenda of sustainable development because they are underfunded. I think one was, underfunded by about, they said they needed about 134 million. Then they will be fine. So maybe it might be good if we can get your comments on that. We are trying to advance this argument on their behalf because we're quite touched by the work that they are doing, and then it was quite concerning that they could not do it because they don't have the money. No. It's not on a specific, just general question to get your comments on that. Whether are there any ways maybe you can engage even with the department on a department to department on an intra-departmental engagement. The last question just got a couple of questions based basically on page 137, which is E. There's a page 3, there is a D. It's E, 137. Yeah, 137. It's supply chain management. It says the supply chain procurement by other means. I just would like to understand, what does that mean? Is it deviation? Or because of course there are quite a number of is quite huge amounts of money that has been procured by other means. What does other means mean? Is it means outside of the procurement rules, or what does it really mean? And of course, table 3.2, contract variation and expansion. Now there it says it's the security services of the procurement client center SEP building. Is it our building that we're giving security, or we are securing SEP building? I think I know, I'm familiar with the building, because when you drive along the highway, you can see there. Is it our building that we're procuring services for security services to, or is it SEP building? Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair. And good afternoon, members. There's quite a number of questions. So I'm going to deal with one or two, and then I'm going to ask the colleagues just to come in and support. So I think the question that I'm going to deal with is in terms of page 83, and that's the question on the number of new cases, closed cases, and what is happening in that regard. So this is the report of this from our forensic unit. And in terms of their work, they've concluded their part. There is a part that we still need to, and that is still in progress. And that's what follows from the forensic report. So that process is still underway. And so there is no yet, we have not finalized the outcome of that. But in terms of the work that the forensic unit has done, that has been concluded. Then there were a number of questions specifically as it relates to risk. And I think because we had the discussion this morning, specifically on the increased strain on employees and their well-being, the Provincial Treasury had been at pains to ensure that we continue to support the staff members, especially intensified during COVID, but also post-COVID, because there's we exited one particular pandemic or crisis, and we entered another. And so there's a lot of hardships, even when we deal with everyday life, that we need to recognize that staff is dealing with. And so when we deal with the individual, then we must deal with the individual holistically. So we have done a number of interventions with staff, and I'm going to ask Ms. Nadia Ishmael to just expand on that. Isaac will deal with the question specifically as it relates to the risk during the year, and that is in terms of the conformance by municipalities to laws and regulations. And Aziz, I think you have a special request that you will obviously see to. And we've also touched on the municipal support this morning, but Stephen, if we can maybe just go back to that particular issue. And then I think the rest of the issues will leave with the CFO and the team. So over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, HUD. Thank you, Chairperson. So approximately 5 years ago, we initiated a culture journey. It endured and it survived the entire pandemic. Our primary goal in line with that journey was to nurture a positive workplace culture. And we wanted to endeavour to have an ongoing commitment towards active engagement from all of our departmental staff at the various levels. These included interventions such as psychological assessments, individual coaching, team coaching, leadership behavior training, which focused on emotional intelligence, which is a soft skill, but in actual fact, it is quite a hard skill. And as part of this journey, which is ongoing, we have collectively agreed on and identified 3 critical behaviors that, when consistently practiced, would enhance our workplace culture. And these focus on and around communication, a commitment by our leadership as well as our staff members on clear goal setting and involving our employees in decision making. So while we try to uphold this commitment, I would like to give you some examples, some practical examples. We do have a PT Connect session that we try to have at least twice a year. These are sessions where all of our staff are involved and they are able to express themselves. We are wanting to coincide it with our second departmental strategic planning session. We want to give them an opportunity to share their ideas and the plans that they have for the department. A more practical example that I can also give closer to home, we are about to embark on a modernization light project for the 3rd floor on the 7 Wells Street side, and we are scheduling a session with our staff, with all of our staff members, just to give them communication on the topic and to get feedback from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this response is on the risk as far as supply chain management is concerned, and as you're well aware, this is always one of those areas that there will always be risk, and within the provincial test, of course, we've also prioritized that. So that particular bullet point refers twofold. First of all, the capacity of the local government supply chain management unit over these years. I can't recall that we have always had the full complement. There's always vacancies because of members of our staff being taken up, particularly from municipalities. That's the one issue. And then secondly, of course, the plethora of instructions that's coming from the National Treasury, and as you're well aware, also the fact that the 2017 regulations was abolished and the implementation of the 2022 regulations as well. So how did we mitigate it? What we've done, we've taken a district approach, and maybe I should just explain how the district approach work. We basically get the district municipality pulling all the B municipalities together, and we will then have sessions on a district level as well. So basically, what we've done, we've made also use of the expertise within a municipal environment, to particular where there are supply chains that's less matured in some of the municipalities, that they also transfer that knowledge. So that was key in mitigating the risk. The second area is that we established reference groups across the municipalities. For instance, reference group on supply chain governance, capacity building, supply chain technology, and also strategic procurement. And those reference groups are being led by municipalities, but we are playing the support role as far as that is concerned. And if there are issues of a policy nature that we need to address from a provincial treasury perspective, we basically pull the reference groups together, which means that as a provincial treasury, we're not just issuing a guidance, we sit with those particular reference groups and leaders, and through that, we also ensure that they communicated within a municipal environment. Now that has helped quite a lot, as you'll see in the previous financial year. Our audit outcomes on municipalities were quite good. Of course, for this year we will closely watch that, because the change from the 2017 to the 22 regulations might have impact. But this will always be on our radar. We will always identify it as a risk, just because of the nature of procurement. That's the one issue. The second issue, as far as the security lease for the client center is concerned, we've got one particular floor in that particular building, and our security is mostly linked to access control, because mostly suppliers they're accessing that building. So that is where we're using the security. It's not the security of the whole building. That is SAP's responsibility. It's only for that particular floor. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Yeah, we've had this question about the underspending on Beaufort West this morning as well. And I think the reason that we get it repeated is that it's quite a surprising situation, in that the work was delivered at less cost than what the private sector consultants had originally quoted. So all of the project milestones were met, and they billed us, and it was less than what was provided for in the budget, and less than actually what they had quoted, because we had adjusted in the adjustments budget, we brought the amount that was provided for that support down to what they had quoted. The other thing that may be a little bit misleading in the way that it's written in the annual report is it says it's support for the implementation of the financial recovery plan, which cost less, which might make it sound as though the whole implementation of the financial recovery plan was cost less or something. I mean, that was just one piece of support for a much larger financial recovery plan project. So it's just that one piece of support that cost less. And then I'll just start on the response to Honourable Sileko's question about Laingsburg, and Aziz can add to it. Following the engagement that the Select Committee on Local Government had in Laingsburg, my team went back to, our teams went back to Laingsburg to see an on-site demonstration of the problems from Laingsburg. For whatever reason, Laingsburg chose not to give us a live demonstration in that meeting, but rather to show us kind of screenshots and talk through the problems. We also held a follow-up with the service provider based in Cape Town, and the service provider took us through the issues and explained very clearly that the system that Laingsburg has purchased is fully functional. In their view, they would like Laingsburg to move to a cloud-based system, but that may require IT upgrades. It would also require additional fees, but the current system that they have is fully functional and is fully operational in other municipalities, particularly in the Eastern Cape, and they could give us examples of municipalities that are able to perform the full range of required functions on that system. And we are planning during November to go with the service provider to Laingsburg again to do an on-site demonstration so that we can see both sides come together and kind of work that out. Aziz?
Just perhaps to add is, even yesterday in the SIGFARO conference, we had a similar question from the bank in terms of how do we support the smaller rural municipalities, and the response was quite clear. When National Treasury writes laws, it doesn't take into consideration the size of an institution. It writes the same law for 257 municipalities. You have metros that has significant, shall we say, big staff establishments, and they can delegate. In the case of Laingsburg, it has a very small staff establishment, and sometimes things bottlenecked within the CFO's office because she's a key member of personnel there. The risk for Laingsburg is, should the CFO leave, they need to appoint somebody that is both IT competent as well as understands both the accounting and the system requirements. That is flagged as one of the risks for Laingsburg.
But the risk also for rural municipalities is that professionals, or let me say, finding qualified staff in the locality isn't always that easy. So many of our local municipalities that lives further from the center finds it very difficult to appoint professional staff from the locality. Ideally, you would want to appoint staff that lives in the location because there's a certain pride when you come from the town. But it's very difficult to get the right, shall we say, credentials when it comes to the inordinate amount of laws and regulations, as well as the technical standards that needs to be complied with. Provincial Treasury does ramp up its support, especially to the rural municipalities. Specifically with Laingsburg, we offered reviewing their financial statements, but you can offer, it depends on whether or not there's appetite from the municipality to pick up the services. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. Thank you very much for the question. And I'll start with page 137, procurement by other means. This is just procurement that was not done via the department, via their own procurement process. As you will see, this is done, the procurement processes are done by the other entity, for example, the other department or National Treasury or CETA, and we have a memorandum of agreement to utilize the services of those companies for which the other entity did the procurement process. You will also see that it's mostly IT related, and as you know, in the Western Cape, our ICT is centralized within the CSC, so they negotiate the contracts, or they do the contracts, and then we just use the contracts for the services that they provide. So that is just on the other procurement by other means. Just on page 95, on the development of a criteria for entering into the partnerships with private sector. The Provincial Treasury does do the oversight, but we don't enter into, for example, for the PPPs, into the agreements with the service providers or the private sector. I think, and I've just listening to this morning's conversation, if we're going to have partnerships with private sector, the Treasury, the vote itself, I think then we will definitely have to look at that. But I think that in negotiations is just in the infant stage, so we haven't have any entered into any agreement yet with the private sector officially. Thanks. I think that's all.
Procurement by other means is like piggybacking.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I know that's what it's called in local government. You know, when they know there's one municipality who's using a service provider, and they just get on the back of that.
No, it's not like that.
Can I respond? No, I don't think, but in these cases, it's piggybacking. We're part of the agreement. So, for instance, when it comes to particular on the ICT environment, that our basically agent is a CI within the department of the Premier, because of the fact that that has been centralized. So when they go to market, it actually includes all the departments that they serve. So that is not piggybacking. Piggybacking is if you're not part of the initial agreement and you go to a process to piggyback, and it is different as within a municipal environment, because in a municipal environment there is a regulation that talks about deviations within the provincial and national departments. By other means includes quite a number of areas, which include basically piggybacking, but it also includes being part of national contracts, of other provincial contracts. So there is just a difference in this particular case. This is not piggybacking, but making use of contracts that are arranged by other agencies or departments, but you're part of the initial process. So it's not where you'll find in a municipality that a contract is arranged for a particular quantity, and now you want to piggyback and you have a different contract that's arranged. So there's just a difference as far as that is concerned.
Question, yeah. Chair, you seem to be a lobbyist for the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning when it comes to their budget. I'm sure that most departments would have said the same thing. And as you're well aware, we're in a fiscal emergency at the moment, which means that we'll be facing very deep budget cuts that will affect departments significantly. We're going through the budget process at the moment. And so each department is looking at how they respond to that. And so it is unlikely that departments will receive any increase in budget. In fact, it will most likely go the other way, given that our provincial share is being cut, both in terms of our share, but also then the allocations. So unfortunately, we wish that the situation were different and that the Western Cape could receive additional funding, in which case that would certainly be on the table. Thanks.
Honorable Nkonzo.
Thank you for the responses, colleagues. Page 127 on the consultants. Just want to know on these consultants, especially those that would provide a number of contracts or contracted more than once.
127.
127.
127.
Part D. Part D, 127.
Yeah, we're dealing with E. We're dealing with D.
So,
we don't deal with E, with D. That's the same issue I raised with Honorable Marie.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's just that my chairperson is sitting next to me. So that's why.
The department is department is rubbing on that.
Okay, Chair, apologies for that. Okay, let me leave that one then, Chair, for another time. Can I go to page 172? In page 172, that's part F. Are we there? Okay. On part F, can I just get an explanation around, actually, that's why I was asking my question, because it is in this page that the issue on consultants is being referred to part D. So that is why I was actually asking Chair, because I wanted to understand what created this increase.
Case you can do that cross comparison.
Okay.
Because it's related.
Oh, okay. No, I think that note sent me to part D that explains this increase in consultants in the department. But having said that, my question is on the next one of the money paid on legal services. And I just want to understand if the department can explain more. The services received from the Senior Council on tax and other matters related to the draft Western Cape 20th and 21st Gambling and Racing Amendment Bills. If you can just give details, what are these tax and other matters in this case that you are referring to? And does this have got anything to do with what is under contingent liabilities, which is on page 181? Is that the same case or it's a different one? And actually on this case, which has got a claim of almost 46 million, where is this case now? And is the department, if indeed this case would be concluded, does the department have 46 million to pay the SunWest International? If you could answer that in terms of that case. And then on page Let me just check my pages again. Or on page 179, on the other receivables 10.4, there you mention that the increase on other receivables were due to an employee who left the department taking leave to which she was not entitled to. How did this come about? That somebody can take leave that was not entitled to? And how was this matter sorted, if it was? I think those are my ones, Chair. I think the last ones actually. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, perhaps this is my confusion, but just going back to the Laingsburg and Beaufort West answers, I was curious in terms of how would the cloud technology be funded? Because in these municipalities, we're dealing with unfunded budgets. So you can't pay for infrastructure necessarily, or there's not a significant budget allocated to that. And I'm not really sure how that's going to work practically. Also, when we visited those municipalities through local government, we were informed that the previous versions of MSCO weren't sufficient and it was too expensive to upgrade it accordingly. But because of the unfunded budget, that they couldn't. And even if they were able to upgrade it, that they didn't have the staff capacity and the staff weren't properly trained. So if you get cloud tomorrow and it's great, then there's no one there who can necessarily do it or have the staff been put in place. It would be great, but I don't think it has yet happened. So if I could just get some clarity on that. Apologies for being a bit pessimistic, but I really want to know what's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I think there's a follow-up that you will need to respond to, because I was trying to find the page number and I realized that it's something that you said in the response to previous question. Just in terms of most of the questions, I'm going to ask Shirley just to deal with the tax issues as well as the legal services. Thanks, Shirley.
Thank you, Acting HOT members, Chair, Minister. The tax and legal are around the provisions of the 20 and 21st Gambling Amendment Acts, which are money bills, and we are waiting for a Concord judgment in respect of whether matters need to be an amendment or a regulation, amendment to the legislation or regulation. Tax legal opinion has been sought in this regard from Council, and we are still awaiting that matter. Given the complexities of the issues at hand, in order to ensure that robust approach is taken, the Provincial Treasury, in conjunction with the legal services, sought both legal opinion and tax legal opinion in this respect. On the SunWest matter, this refers to SunWest International launching an application in the Constitutional Court to appeal and dismiss misjudgment in order of the Supreme Court of Appeal in respect of free play credits that should not form part of taxable GGR. The Supreme Court of Appeal found in favour of the Western Cape Gambling Racing Board, and SunWest launched I've lost the legal term here, but an appeal on that, and the Western Cape Gambling Racing Board was the first appellant in this respect, and the Minister in the second. We have been deposed in this respect. So it is, this is the last court of appeal, but the matter is looking favourable. We are awaiting judgment in this respect. Are there any other? Hope I've answered those questions appropriately, Acting HOT.
Yeah, let me just maybe add a little bit of background. So This has been in our financial statements raised as a contingent liability, because the argument that the casino has put up is that the tokens that they provide their customers for free play should not be part of the drop, and therefore not be part of the tax that we're saying that they owe provincial government that is payable. So they went to court on this particular matter. So when they went to court the first time, we did the calculation and said, okay, if we do lose the case, then it means we need to make provision to pay this money. What has happened to the casino? But what has happened, we went to court and the judgment went against the industry. So we were proven to be correct in our assumption and the application of law. However, they have now appealed the judgment, and they have now gone to the Constitutional Court. One can argue that it's not necessarily a constitutional matter, but we are opposing. We have already submitted our affidavit to oppose the appeal. So for now, this amount will remain until that is the last court of appeal, and we can have finality on a particular matter. And therefore, the money would be encumbered back, and it will be then in the provincial revenue fund. That is that particular issue.
That's correct.
CFO.
Now, HOD, who's got the money now? Where is the money? Is it with us or is it within the industry?
The money is with us.
Okay.
It is in the
We must
provincial
hold on
revenue
tight
fund.
to it.
Okay, the question on the other receivables, leave taken by official, that she could not take. It's usually leave forms needs to be submitted before leave is taken, and it needs to be captured. But in this case, the employee left. CSC did the leave audit, and some of the forms were captured late. But then we also recover the money from the pension fund of the employee. Thanks.
Then to the member regarding who will carry the cost for the cloud services. I recall when about a few years ago, we had a negotiation with the service provider with Laingsburg. Laingsburg was deficient in preparing their financial statements, and the negotiation that we had with the service provider was assist them to prepare their financial statements. They would then seed their debtors book or portion thereof. The vendor then collected part of the debt and then first recovered the money and then paid whatever they over recovered, they paid it back to Laingsburg. So we could have negotiations with our data, who is their service provider, because the municipality, our data has been servicing them for some time. And you do find that in some service or vendors, they believe in social responsibility. So if it's about continuing the service for Laingsburg, we could negotiate. We have had and would continue with discussions and negotiations with the vendor, because it's not the only, Laingsburg isn't the only municipality that they serve, and to increase their footprint and to maintain the relationship and their reputation in the province, it's negotiations that we could have on behalf of the municipality. National Treasury is very clear that neither the National Treasury open that gate, 257 municipalities will come knocking to support them in paying for financial systems. But we do guide the municipalities, even in the supply chain process, before they change systems, consider what is the impact of changing systems. So it is a reiterative process where we're constantly working hand in hand with the service provider together with Laingsburg and see that there could be a meeting of minds, and especially with the rural municipalities, a lowering of the costs.
I take it you've exhausted your questions. So in the absence of appetite for more question on that side, we think then we have kind of come to the end of the engagement with the department. There is no indication of any member of the presence of any member of the public. It's one of the, this year we've been very unlucky in terms of having members of the public. Now then, let me make use of the opportunity then to thank the department, Minister, the HOD, and the rest of the staff for always being responsive and available whenever we invite you or call you to come and engage with us. I'm always saying that when we ask questions, it's not with the intention of trying to trick you or to catch you up. We're trying to also find answers to some of the questions that we are also battling with, and also we are also playing our role of having to hold the executive to account, and we are doing that in a very cooperative manner. Thank you very much for your responses, and thank you very much for your continued cooperation in this regard, and also to the Auditor General as well as the Audit Committee. They are very dependable ally in this accountability of ecosystem. So thank you very much. Also to members, thank you very much. We have taken a decision at the beginning that when we started that, we are only going to take resolution right at the end of the, when we finish our meeting, where we are going to list all the department and say, look, we've met with this department, we think would like to have more question on this. So don't be surprised then, Minister and HOD, when we write back and say, look, we think this is not clear, please come back and clarify it further for us. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you very much, honorable members. The meeting is closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee.
Thanks.